Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the last day of the European Skeptics Conference here in Vienna. I hope you've all recovered from yesterday and been able to manage the transition from yesterday to today. And so we're going to have a session today on conspiracy theories, and especially in the context of COVID. This has been a big issue for us in the last couple of years, but there are many topics beyond COVID itself. So we're going to start today with a talk by Ulrike Schiesser. She's a psychologist and a psychotherapist and works at an entity for handling cult affairs in Austria. And she's been focusing a lot on how to support and how to counsel families who have people who are involved in such cults, but also to help people transition back into the real world from these cults. So I'm looking forward to the talk by Ulrike Schiesser. Well, please welcome her.
So, thank you for the invitation. That was on my bucket list. Once in my life I wanted to speak at a skeptics conference, and I was really happy when Martin Mahner asked me, and they said, yeah, I made it. And then I realized it was in English. Like, ooh. So, well, I'm a psychologist and psychotherapist, and I work at Bundesstelle for Sektenfragen, a federal institute. That's why we have this very impressive logo. And the last 2 years, we had a lot of calls of people who said someone in my family, my friends or co-workers have fallen into the rabbit hole of conspiracy theory. And they mostly asked the question, how do I get him or her out of it? And I had about 250 cases that were dealing mostly with conspiracy theory. Holm Hümmler invited me, maybe 4 years ago, to write a book with him about how to talk to people who are believing something completely different, and how to bridge that gap, how to reach them. Is it even possible? And this is the advertisement part of my speech. There will be an English version. It should be published anytime now, so we are waiting for it. Mostly, we are in the situation that we look at someone that is thinking or doing strange things, and we think, well, what are they doing? And I want to tell them this is problematic, or they maybe endanger themselves. And the discussions often go like this. So the person I'm talking with is often very emotional, especially with conspiracy theory. They are emotional, they get very quickly aggressive. And we try to reason with them. We say, look, these are the facts. Please think about the facts. We have the hope that they will realize, yes, you're wrong. Yes, I'm wrong. Thank you for pointing it out to me. And then they shed their belief system, and they become the rational person and someone we like to discuss with. What is happening in reality is that they are not so happy about our good ideas and about our facts. And it feels like you're talking against the wall. You don't reach them. And the interesting part is, if you are speaking to someone who's believes in conspiracy theories, they say the same thing. They feel the same. They also feel, I'm talking to someone and who is not listening to me. The reason that it's so difficult to reach other person is very clear. I don't have to speak more about it, that our brain is not really wired to be logical, and we are prone to faulty thinking, faulty memories, and even our conception of the reality is, it's faulty. It's not really, the reality is not really as we see it. This is a very well-known example by Ebbinghaus. The gray points do have the same size, but it's almost impossible for us to see it, even if we know it, to see that they are the same size. Believe me, I checked yesterday, last time I checked, they're the same size. So people who believe in conspiracy theories, they want the world to be simple, clear. There is good, there's bad. On the good side is the family, the nature, the home country. And on the bad side is everything that is technology, globalization, every kind of restriction of freedom. And they want to be the hero in their own story. So to be the hero, you need a villain. You need something really bad to fight against. So that's the only way you can become a hero. And they want to be part of a community. So part of an elite, so be important. And they want to save the children. This is also one point how you can recognize really problematic conspiracy theories is if they use children, if they use the safety of children. This is one very good sign that this is the more problematic ones, because they want to push you into a lot of emotion. And they want to save the children from whatever they think is wrong in the world. So it's also a good way to have, to justify your homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, anti-Semitism. So whatever is your political favor, you can justify it with conspiracy theories. And you can be some kind of, we call it Schnitzeljagd in Germany. So you can find the clues, you can put the clues together, and you see the secret science, and it's funny, it's interesting, and you can feel very satisfied that you have known the truth behind all this complex reality. So, and the truth here is very clear that Corona is satanic. Of course it is. You can see it. And you want to reach other people, you want to save them, you want to help them, you want to say, take the red pill, this is the reality, wake up. Problem is they don't want to, very often. Very often this is a really frustrating thing. So, how do we talk to someone when the conspiracy theory is their superpower? It's good for them, they like it, their life is better with it, they feel better with the conspiracy theory, it is really their superpower. And now we are coming and we want to say, no, you're wrong, this is all wrong, you're thinking wrong. So, I want you to ask yourself, in this room there are a lot of people who have had some change of their point of view in their life, who maybe lost religion or found religion or changed their political views fundamentally. So if you think back, have you ever gone through this process of changing really important parts of your identity, really important views of the world? If you think back, then ask yourself, what is it that convinced you? What was important for you that you changed your mind? How much time did it take you? Was there anything anyone could have done or said that you would have reached that conclusion sooner? And which experiences or which persons have been important for you to reach that? And also, in which phases of your life has this happened? If we had more time, we would discuss this. What I normally get I talk with a lot of people who went through this change, and we analyze it. We also did it in the book, Holm and me, where we analyzed what is it, what makes people change fundamentally in their belief systems. And most of the time it is an experience. It's not a discussion, it's not a good argument. But at the beginning is a kind of experience. You may reach a personal tolerance limit. So the group you have been in doing something that you say, no, this is too much. No, this is I can't sustain this belief anymore. It could also be that you have a new focus in life. You go away, you study in another city, you have a new peer group, and you want to be part of this new group. And this, even without realizing it, you change your point of view, and you near it more to the new peer group. Yeah. Another thing is positive role models, and it always happens slowly. A lot of people say it took me years, and this process is mostly not visible on the outside. It's something that happens inside. Some people never talk about it to others, some do, but you might not see it from the outside. And it can even be that there are phases where they are even more aggressive in their belief system, they seem even more extreme. But on the inside, they are fighting for their point of view, for their standing. So, and there's always the point of shame. If you put a lot of effort, money, love, time into your belief system, it is really shameful to be wrong and to acknowledge that in front of others, but also for yourself. How can I trust myself anymore? This is a question I get asked a lot. I can't trust myself anymore. It was so clear to me. I felt so well. I felt so good in this group. And now I know it was wrong. How can I trust myself? In conversations, there is no really good way to do it. We found there's a lot of different ways to reach someone, and you have to tailor it to your own style and also to the relationship. It's different if you talk to your brother, or if you are the mayor in a village, or if you if you're department head, social worker, police officer. So the situation and the relationship to the other person is always an important point. And there can be also escalating and de-escalating strategies. But enter the discussions not with the mindset of a preacher, but do it with the mindset of an explorer, because it is really, really interesting how intelligent people can believe weird things. It should make you interesting. You shouldn't see it as an affront against you or against science. It's quite interesting. How can this happen? So let this interest guide you. Let this interest for the other person be the main factor. And if you are friendly and if you appear likable, it is a big bonus, because if I feel threatened, I'm not interested in a good discussion. I will just see to save myself. Don't expect that in any discussion a person will, when you're talking about really important things, really core belief systems, that someone will say, wow, that was a really good point, thank you, now I changed my mind. This won't happen, no. Not if we are talking about the really important things in life. In the discussion, people normally say, no, sure, certainly not. We go into defense mode. But maybe afterwards, they might think about it. And it's about creating small cracks, maybe a little nudge in a direction. It's not, more is not more. So don't expect quick results, don't expect to see the results. People who we talked with afterwards often told us, yeah, there was something that really made me think. And I could not let that thought go. For months I was thinking about it. But you don't know what it is. Sometimes these are small things we say that we don't find important that are important for the other person. So also encourage more differentiation. So all journalists lie. All politicians are corrupt. So if in such statements it's possible to see that there is more differentiation. So, and search for the common ground. Have in mind that fanatics want to preach. They want a stage. So sometimes they want to dominate the conversation. In families, it was quite interesting if we analyzed what was happening in the family and how the discussion about the conspiracy theories were affecting the family. There were often power struggles underneath the discussion. So maybe the one brother was happy not to let the other brother win, and it was really about, sometimes it was old family positions, old family struggles that came into this conflict. So if you talk to someone who is really a believer, this is really for people who absolutely, who believe this absolutely, their point of view. Then it is not really, then factual discussions are fruitless, more or less. And in this kind of discussion, I try to stick to my own expertise. So a lot of people want to talk to me about vaccination. And I always say, well, this is not my area of expertise. I have some half knowledge, you have some half knowledge, but I don't want to talk about this. It's not really my area of expertise. But it's quite interesting how you came to your knowledge, and I can tell you how I made my decision to vaccinate. So this we can talk about. So put less focus on the facts and more on the source of information. And this is a lot of aggression gets out of the discussion if you are not talking about the facts, more about whom to trust. And you as a person are often more effective than arguments, you say. This is also, you're always a role model too. If the person is aggressive, then really stop the discussion. Don't give them the stage, and don't let them dominate a discussion if it's just about winning and if it's just about hurting someone. And please show solidarity to everyone who is under pressure, who gets a shitstorm when they speak up in public. This is a real big problem we have at the moment. And please don't stab him or her in the back just because you might have said it a little bit different. We really have to unite, and we really have to help these people who stand up and voice their opinion, experts, scientists. Please show solidarity. Because we have the problem now that more and more people say, I don't want to give any more interviews about it. We all get threats. I think a lot of people here in the room even get death threats. I get them too. And it helps a lot if someone from my colleagues, I get the help from my family, yes. But it's even more important that someone who is works in the same area, who really has this expertise, says to me, yes, I have your back. This is fine. Thank you. You do it right. Do you need anything? Call me. This is really, really important. So, and if a conspiracy theory is voiced in public, it should not go unchallenged, because they always think, yeah, I talk for a big majority, for a silent majority. But on the other side, always keep in mind, extremism is thrives on the fact that a minority is given a lot of attention. So always keep a bit in mind, if just to give them attention, they already have reached their goal. Some of these influencers in the scene, they only want the attention. For them, it's not really about the facts. They just want the stage, the attention. So even bear that in mind, if it's something very strange, a few people believe if it's good to give it more attention or not. Then in the discussion, I found it quite helpful to address our common dilemma. We all live in a very complex world, a world that we only really understand a very small slice. Most of it is something we don't really understand. So we depend on other people. We depend on the knowledge of someone else. And so it's a lot about trust. Whom do you trust? And this is something that is very uniting. This is the same problem for all of us. I also, sometimes I go to the meta level. I say, okay, we have this discussion. I see you are very emotional, and this is a point that's really important for you, but it's also important for me. I can also say it's hurting my feelings that you are talking to me like this. So how can we talk now? This might also help in discussion where someone say, you are hurting my feelings. Then you can say, okay, but it's hurting my feelings too. So tell me, what do we do now? How can we not hurt each other? So really throw the ball back. Let the other person give you some ideas. How can we even talk together? Or in a family, how can we sit together and not fight all the time? And also you can also see if it's someone you know well. Often it's interesting to see what were the effects of the conspiracy. So I see you're sitting a lot of time in front of the TV. I get the impression you are more nervous, you are not more depressed. I see it's not, in my opinion, it's not good for your health. Is it really good for you? So not only talk about the facts, but how does it affect people? How does it affect a family? and ask questions more than doing lectures. Question can be something like, what would convince you that you have been taken in by a conspiracy myth? Or what solutions do you propose? How plausible is it? How many people would have to be involved? Who benefits from this myth? And also to someone, when the people say it's about justice, it's about honesty, you say, okay, this is very important for you. I know you and I believe you, but how do you make sure that this commitment does not put you on the side of the oppressors? And what relevance does it have to you? If man has walked on earth, yes or no, does it really have relevance for you? If you have experienced a change of your own worldviews, talk about it. So it's somehow you all give you're a role model that yes, we can change our views. One approach to this can be street epistemology or Socratic way. You can talk to Salve, our Norwegian here, who is supporting one of the groups. Please talk to him. This is a program where you can really learn this way of asking questions. They made an art form out of it. But also look at the motives of a person. So why does he or she act like this? I always ask the people who call me in the Bundesstelle für Sektenfragen, well, tell me a bit, how is she, how's the social network of this person? How is she financially or in their health? What is working for them or there? What are the topics that really interest them? What are their fears? What are their hopes? And a lot of people say, oh, I never thought about it. It's my sister, but I have no idea if she's happy in her job. So see what could be the positive motivation that someone is part of a conspiracy theory or someone is believing that. Is it about social justice? Is it about the feeling of I feel left out, I feel small in a big world? Is it about fears of the future? And the conspiracy theories are sort of a projection of these fears. But also talk about the consequences. A lot of people who are in this conspiracy world lost friends, lost their jobs. So it is really toxic for their relationships. And talk about this. If it's someone in the family, the most important thing is to maintain the relationship. Because the family is sometimes the last point of contact for someone with people who are not thinking whatever they are thinking. So this is people you can't change your families so easily. You can change your friends, but not their families. So you have to meet them and concentrate on a good relationship. See that you are not always talking about the conspiracy theory. Sometimes it's better to put it on the side. And also build up your own tolerance muscle. Tolerance is a very fine value as an abstract, but it's really hard work if it's concerning something that you don't agree with. So really look at your own tolerance level. It is something that has to be trained. See the other person more as a personality and not only about the ideology, but also set boundaries where necessary. And problematic attitudes should be addressed, but they don't have to be the main focus all the time. Don't mock, don't shame, and really be patient. It might take years, but if it's someone in the family, you're in a very good position to influence them in the long run. So all the best now, and I wish you very interesting conversations.
you very much. Thank you very much, Ulrike. We'll be taking questions at the end. We'll have all the 4 talks one after the other, and we'll have a panel and look at the commonalities and discuss those then. So as the next speaker, we have a talk by Péter Krekó. He's a political scientist and a social psychologist and an expert on disinformation, and he's in fact done his PhD on the social psychology of conspiracy theories, so it's exactly fitting into what the topic that we have today. He's written a lot of books as well, two on conspiracy theories, but also on the Hungarian far right, and where he also looks at things like how disinformation comes in from Russia and how the European far right develops. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Péter Krekó to give his talk. The floor is yours.
So thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity. And so the talk I'm going to deliver will be partially about COVID-related conspiracy theories and pseudo-scientific beliefs, but also a bit about political conspiracy theories and the overlap between the two. So the reason why I gave the title "Conspiracy Theories Are for Winners" is because there is a very dominant view in social psychology, and I think it's pretty much part of the common sense, especially among people who are skeptical about conspiracy theories, that conspiracy theories are for losers. And this is what I would like to partially challenge a bit. What this original statement is about, that conspiracy theories are for losers, is that usually the people who are deprived of intellectual power, political power, wealth, or are in any sense are in an unprivileged status, are the ones who are believing in conspiracy theories. And let's be honest, this is a highly comfortable view, because it would just mean that stupid people are believing in conspiracy theories, and the ones who are, let's say, the margins of the society. On the other hand, as Ulrike also told in the previous talk, in many instances we can see that highly educated people can believe in conspiracy theories, and we know it, for example, from the theory of motivated reasoning, that intellect can help you to defend the most ludicrous views. If you want to, you can use all your knowledge, all your intellect to defend the undefendable. So it's not necessarily always the case that the ones who are the least intellectual are the ones who are believers of conspiracy theories. But of course, there are some research that supports the claim that, for example, ones who are deprived of political power have a higher tendency to believe in certain kinds of conspiracy theories. This is the so-called conspiracy mentality. Also, the ones, Jan Willem had some good research on that and wrote articles. There is some correlation between education and beliefs in conspiracy theories. Also, among minority groups, we usually see higher conspiracy theories. But it does not mean, and I think if we overemphasize this view that conspiracy theories are for losers, I think we are missing something very important. First, that sometimes people who are in the position of power are believing in conspiracy theories. B, the ones who are in a position of power are much more successful in spreading conspiracy theories. So if you are a state actor, and I will talk a bit about that, how state-sponsored disinformation works, in the case study of Hungary, then of course you have much more resources to spread your views. So first I will talk a bit about who conspiracy theories are for. I will talk a bit about Hungary as an informational autocracy, where we can see that many kinds of conspiracy beliefs are spread by the state actors practically, and then some conclusions. Sorry, I just can't find the right direction. Yeah, just to defend a bit the theory that I would like to challenge, the conspiracy theories are for losers. This is a study we done in 26 countries, and it shows this is the level of the conspiracy mentality in the case of the governmental voters. This is the blue line, and in the case of the opposition voters, this is the red line. And we can see that, opposition voters have the tendency of have stronger conspiracy mentality. What does it mean? Believing that there are some evil things happening in the background, and a lot of things are happening behind the curtains. So it's a general view. If you are oppressed of power, you tend to develop this kind of views. It does not mean, though, that all the conspiracy theories are more popular on the opposition, among opposition voters than among governmental voters. And in Hungary, for example, sorry, I'm just always missing the direction. So it does not mean that there aren't certain kind of conspiracy theories that are much more popular on the opposition side. So, but conspiracy theories can be highly effective for authoritarian winners. And I don't want to deliver a lecture in history, not just because I'm not a historian, but also because, the examples I'm referring to are quite well known. So Adolf Hitler's Third Reich, Stalin's Soviet Union, Pol Pot's Cambodia, Vidal's Argentina, and many examples go on and on and on. Regimes in the 20th century, but they exist in the 21st century as well, that are spreading and legitimizing themselves with conspiracy theories of evil groups conspiring against us, which helps to crack down on opponents and helps to mobilize the masses. And of course, it's happening these days in Vladimir Putin's Russia, Erdogan's Turkey, in Poland, in Hungary, in Serbia, and a lot of other countries. Singapore is an example as well. So there are many regimes that, and it's overlapping with populism, but not equal to populism, where you can see that conspiracy theories are very helpful for the ones in power to keep and save the power. These are, two sources, one on Fortress, it's Ilya Yablokov's book. I highly recommend it if someone is interested about the conspiracy theories. In Russia, it is pretty timely, given that right now there is a war in Ukraine that is being legitimized by conspiracy theories, like Ukraine is developing nuclear weapons, like there are secret US biolabs in Ukraine that are preparing viruses that only kill Russians, not Ukrainians, which is a bit strange if the main argument is that let's invade them because we are one people by the end of the day. But anyway, the conspiracy culture in Russia, and it is a bit related to religion, it is a bit related to history, but it is related to a certain kind of regime that are pushing it. So it's practically, you can explain some behavioral patterns of the regime with the conspiracy theory. So there are not just ludicrous beliefs, but these are also shaping history. And we can, Erdogan's Turkey, especially after the coup, is a prime example again how anti-Western conspiracy theories become even more important in every sense. So this is not directly related to conspiracy theories. It's just, again, a reminder that disinformation, it's a so-called computational propaganda. It's the project of Oxford Institute and some others that are mapping the Oxford University, mapping the state-sponsored disinformation spread by mainstream political actors in all over the world. And you can see, the darker countries are the ones where you can find at least one parliamentary party that is spreading disinformation online. Most of the people in the world, so the majority of the people, around 2/3 of the world's population, are living in countries when this is the case. And disinformation is not equal to conspiracy theories, but it's overlapping to a high extent. Just from 2017 to 2019, the number of countries that the researchers found that had organized social media manipulation campaigns have changed from 28% to 70, 28 countries to 70 countries. So it's a huge increase. This is the trend that we are living in, that conspiracy theories are, in many cases, spread by mainstream actors and state actors. Also, there was a study of University of Oxford and Reuters Institute that found in Great Britain that only 20% of COVID-related disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theories are from, let's say, the elites, politicians, opinion leaders, celebrities, but it was responsible for 70% of the engagement. Again, there is this very romantic approach to conspiracy theories and disinformation. This is the voice of the poor, right? It's like the frustrated people who are out of power and have all the problems. They are just spreading that, and it comes with a high level of empathy as well. And I'm not saying that that this view is always wrong, but what we can tell for sure is that, especially on the supply side, the elites, the winners, are much more efficient in spreading disinformation and conspiracy theories than the losers themselves. So again, COVID-related disinformation, 70% of the most influential disinformation that creates the engagement are from winners. Let's give one example from Hungary where we could see, for example, that conspiracy theories can be much more efficient and among governmental voters. So right now, to the demand side from the supply side. If you see the second line, Kremlin conspiracy scale, there were some statements that, like the previous one I mentioned, that Ukraine is a country of Nazis that want to Nazify let's say, even Russia, or that there are secret US biolabs in Ukraine that will be used against Russians, and so on. So these are statements that we know from the Russian disinformation, but also the ones that were highly prevalent in the Hungarian public domain. What we could see is that the blue dot is for the opposition voters of the left-wing liberal opposition. They almost did not believe at all in these kinds of conspiracy theories, while the orange dot is for the governmental voters, for Fidesz voters. They were quite receptive to such kind of conspiracy theories, and they are really not the losers politically, given that Fidesz is on government for 12 years. But given that the pro-governmental media was pushing these narratives, it was just more popular there. The green dot is of an extreme right party. I would say it's not like FPÖ, it's more like NPD, so an almost neo-Nazi party with a very strong pro-Kremlin, anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown attitude that could even show higher level of both conspiracy theories that were spread by the Kremlin about the war and also about COVID. But even in COVID conspiracy cases, it's like anti-vax and lockdowns are dominated by or organized by background powers and these typical kinds of statements, and that the vaccine is a biological weapon and things like that. These statements were also much more popular on the governmental side than on the opposition side. So here do not really see that conspiracy theories are for losers, but more for winners. What is interesting, it's not that surprising, but we found a very high correlation between the two kinds of conspiracy theories. It was 0.6 Pearson correlation, and so the ones who believed in COVID conspiracies had a very high tendency to believe in Kremlin conspiracy theories as well, which is not, I mean, let's say, formologically, it's not really logical, right? I mean, why should Ukraine be a Nazi country if background powers were behind the COVID? But it was a very strong correlation. Also, interestingly, the mediator between the two was not really a general conspiracy mindset, but it more seemed like, let's say, COVID conspiracy theories opened the door to other kinds of conspiracy theories. And yes, we know it from the conspiracy theory literature that if you enter into the rabbit hole, then you just don't know which hole you will end up. So, okay, I'm jumping it over. And tell a bit about Hungary as an information autocracy, spin dictatorship. Again, just underlining the argument that the most dangerous threat when it comes, I think, to common sense, to be a bit pathetic, from conspiracy theories, from pseudo-scientific beliefs, are mainly coming from the mainstream and not from the margins of the society, at least, and of course, societies differ a lot in that respect, at least in countries where democratic checks and balances are not operating that well. Like Hungary, there was, yeah, everybody knows there was an election in Hungary this April where Orbán could win his 4th consecutive term. It will be his 5th because he was in power between 1998 and 2002 as well. And it was it was the biggest victory ever of Fidesz, with more than 50% votes on the party list, which of course, because of the nature of the Hungarian electoral system, it was translated into a 2/3 majority. But it was a huge win anyway, and no one was expected it to that level. Only a half year before the election, the government and the opposition was neck to neck, and there were high expectations from broad parts of the society that the government can be challenged. But it didn't really happen. And there was 4 campaign messages that Orbán was pushing throughout the campaign. The opposition would pull Hungary into the war and even conscript Hungarian soldiers to go and fight in Ukraine. It would not make too much sense, to be frank, because in Hungary we have a professional army. So guys like me taking up the weapon and going anywhere to fight, I don't think we could help too much to win any war. But it was the message that if you vote for the opposition, your sons, your husbands, even your grandpa will be taken away and fight against the Russians in Ukraine. Why? It's not our war. Second statement, if the opposition is elected, the era of cheap gas will be over and they would immediately raise the prices of the gas. The opposition, denied it many times, and right now it's the government that is raising the cap on cheap gas because it's unsustainable. The Hungarian opposition secretly conspired with Volodymyr Zelensky and his cabinet to interfere in the elections to help the Hungarian opposition. I think Hungary was probably the only country where, within the European Union, when Volodymyr Zelensky was not a hero, but the enemy. And the enemy against the Fidesz government that is secretly conspires with the Hungarian opposition. 4th statement, if the opposition wins the election, children will be exposed to danger of sex-change surgeries. So it's like the opposition wants to promote sex-changing surgeries in the kindergartens. Makes total sense, right? I mean, if you have a new term as a newly elected political power, this is the first thing what you do. I mean, it makes sense in every way. And there was a referendum on the day of the election where there were some statements like, do you support promoting sex-change surgeries for children, and things like that. So it was all over the political agenda. There was a 5th statement as well, that the next government would take away the 13th month pension. So and so sorry for showing that many figures, I will stop it soon. There were some, among the ones who heard about these conspiracy theories, 60% said that Péter Márki-Zay would send Hungarian soldiers to Ukraine. 53% thought that the leftist opposition would take away the 13th month pension. 45% said the left supports propagation of gender-changing operations. And 55% thought that Hungary fought successfully against the COVID pandemic. All of these are fake news. As for the last one, Hungary had the second highest mortality in the European Union, fourth highest in the world compared to the size of the population because of problems with policy decisions and low level of testing and so on. So all of these statements are factually totally incorrect, and there are very significant parts of the population who believe that. So I don't want to say that the only reason why Fidesz could win the election to this surprisingly high extent was disinformation and conspiracy theories, but I would say that the most important reason for that was that. And just a few words about spin dictators, which I think is an important thought to underline. It's a new book of Sergei Guriev and Daniel Treisman. I highly recommend it to everyone. It's Spin Dictators, the Changing Face of Tyranny in 21st Century. Practically what they are arguing is that the new kinds of dictatorships do not suppressing people by violence. There are no mass persecutions, no mass imprisonments, no mass jailing of journalists. In most non-democratic countries, no political executions, or their level is declining according to the figures all over the world. But there are politicians who were elected as Democrats and then just by manipulating the information turn their regime in a non-democratic regime. If they do it well, they don't have to use violence. And therefore they can just argue, am I a dictator, really? Let's show me a journalist who is in prison. Opposition parties can run on the elections. What's the problem? There are free elections, even if they are a bit of unfair due to the asymmetric access to the information, but still the argument, I think, is pretty much valid. And on the picture you can see at the top, the classic kind of dictators are usually, they even like to wear military uniforms to show that they can beat you up, they can be aggressive if they want. New kinds of dictators are in suits, and they look like Democrats who were elected mostly by democratic processes. And I would argue, and I wrote an article about that this applies pretty well to Hungary more and more. 4 features of informational autocracies. First, low level of violence. It obviously applies to Hungary. Orban is very, careful, for example, when there are protests on the streets, to really that the policemen remain soft on the protesters. So there are no pictures when protesters are seriously beaten up and things like that. So there should be never any violence that are easy to capture through cameras. Mimicking and pretending democracy, it's quite self-obvious. Less public support among the elites and the highly educated among the masses and the less educated, and this is quite true in Hungary. Then their legitimacy is based on competence and performance. So these are the 4 features that mostly fit to Hungary. The hardware of Hungarian information autocracy was, of course, the strongest media concentration. You can see it compared to Austria and Slovenia. The level of media concentration, the green line is of Hungary, and it is remarkable. I think in Hungary you can see far the most centralized media environment within the whole European Union, with more than 500 media outlets are put in a huge giga foundation that is, let's say, spreading political messages in a quite coordinated manner in a country of 10 million, which is quite remarkable. And I think even Silvio Berlusconi could just have dreamed of a media empire ever that Viktor Orban enjoys these days. Let me show a few examples when we can obviously see that public campaigns had an impact on the public opinion. So it's like, it's let's say, field experiment, but the polls are rather talkative. There was the big campaign against George Soros, one of the results of which is that, unfortunately, sorry to say that to any Austrians, but I was, yeah, that CEU had to move to Vienna. It's good for Vienna, it's not that good for Budapest. And there was a huge campaign against George Soros, where even to the extent, I mean, it was billboards all over that don't let George Soros to laugh the last, and even there were advertisement surfaces on the floor of the metro line, so you could also step on George Soros's face if you wanted to. But it was like flooding everything, and there were even political campaign billboards like this at the 2018 election when George Soros and another guy, it would be difficult to explain who is him, but let's stick with George Soros, that George Soros is playing with opposition figures. It's like the quite typical visual depiction of conspiracy theories. As a result of all that, 51% of the Hungarian population believed by the end that George Soros wants secretly to bring refugees to Europe. A lot of opposition voters did so as well. So again, and I think it goes a bit, again, I don't like this argument that much, but I think we have to sometimes be a bit skeptical about the statement that in our new era, I mean, we learned a lot from the history, and people cannot be brainwashed the same way than they were in the 20th century. They can. And I think Hungary is a very sad example in that respect. Another example, there were in 2015-16, there were this anti-migrant campaign in Hungary. I mean, it reached also a bit Vienna when one of the leading Hungarian governmental politicians came to Vienna and showed some quite decent streets, in fact, in Vienna, showing that, oh my God, let's look at how many migrants are here. We don't want to turn to Vienna. While many people thought in Hungary, I mean, we would be quite happy to be on the same level of Vienna. But anyway, you can see it's one of the most popular propaganda sites in Hungary. 5 minutes, okay. It was, migrants are everywhere. Migrants in Vienna, migrants wants to cut your throat, want to rape you, and all this level of messaging to an industrial scale, and it went on for more than a year. As a result of that, by 2018, 45% of the Hungarian population, it's the relative majority, thought that Muslim leaders have a secret plan for conquering Europe and turn it into an Arabic continent, the Eurabia conspiracy theory that is well known, and almost half of the population thought, again, a massive relative majority that Muslims want to stealthily force their culture on us. So it worked pretty well. And again, it had an impact on the opposition as well, not only on the governmental side. And okay, let it be the last example. How could it have an impact on the beliefs about COVID and its results? So there was as I just told, I mean, hopefully I'm quoting the figures right. So far, about 45,000 people died from COVID in Hungary. In Austria, if I'm not mistaken, it's closer to 15,000. So about 3 times as much people died in COVID in Hungary than in Austria, a country of quite similar size. But according to a poll Viktor Orban at the beginning of the first wave, and Hungary did rather well due to very quick determined lockdowns, that you can measure the success of handling the COVID in the number of dead people. I mean, it was remarkably high in Hungary. But the reason why that had zero impact on the governmental popularity, I mean zero, unlike in United States, unlike in Brazil and many other countries, the populist right leaders were on power, but they suffered due to the ill handling of the pandemic, there was no impact in Hungary at all. And the reason was that in a poll in April 2021, 90% of the voters said that they are aware that Hungary is progressing well in COVID vaccinations. 75% of the voters were not aware that the mortality is in record heights, and less than a third of the population had a relatively realistic estimate of the number of deaths. 2/3 of the Hungarian population were significantly underestimating. And what's the problem with that? It makes you less cautious, and finally is a downward spiral. You are less cautious, you don't take it seriously, and we could see the impact in mortality. So what was the governmental strategy of informing the public about COVID? It's like that, always just communicating the daily figures. No regional distribution, no overall figure, nothing. It's like the daily figure, 100 deaths, 200 deaths, and so on. It tells you nothing if you do not put it into context. And it worked remarkably well. Again, I think the power of an informational autocracy. And of course, I mean, part of the story, I think, is that if you always educate your voters to believe in conspiracy theories, they finally believing in conspiracy theories that you don't want them to believe as well. It's like 43% of Hungarians thought that viruses have been produced in government laboratories to control our freedom, and we know that even if it's, again, just psychological, but the ones who are believing in this view have a lower tendency to vaccinate themselves. Let's take a look at the Austrian figure is like 23%, the German one is 14%. So we can see that in Eastern Europe and in Southern Europe, these kinds of beliefs are much stronger, but also it's part of the story that if you if you put your voter base into the rabbit hole, then you shouldn't expect them to come out at the moment when you want to. And I'm jumping over a few slides to jump to the conclusions. And so my main argument would be that, like, while it can be sometimes sociologically true that undereducated people and people who are out of power have a higher tendency to believe in conspiracy theories, but I do think that, especially once it comes to the supply side, and especially, but also when it comes to informational autocracies, you have to see that conspiracy theories are, many times, for winners, and they can be a very powerful strategy in keeping the power and cracking down symbolically or in other means to the opponents. So this is more the tool of the oppressors, I think, that the oppressed, and also it also means that when the diffusion of conspiracy theories is more a top-down phenomenon, the counter-strategy should be also top-down. So what makes in countries like that, but I think even in United States, for example, during Donald Trump, what makes this fight against conspiracy theories very difficult is that if there are very good NGO strategies and let's say good media projects and so on, but they cannot be really efficient if the power is spreading the myths and these beliefs, the pseudo-scientific views and conspiracy theories in an industrial scale. So I will stop here. Thanks for your attention. Happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. It was an excellent presentation with some quite disturbing parts in it. So we'll go on to the next talk now from Holm Hümmler from Germany. He's a member of GWP. He's done his studies in physics and business administration, and did his PhD in high energy nuclear physics in Brookhaven National Laboratory and in CERN. And for the skeptics, he's been involved on the one hand on pseudophysics, but a lot on conspiracy theories. I can't remember the whole number of conspiracy theories he's dealt with in the past, amongst other things, the fake moon landing and the chemtrails. But today, he's going to talk about conspiracy theories around 5G. So let's give Holm Hümmler the floor. Holm.
Yeah, thank you. After hearing some more general talk about conspiracy myths today, I'm going to look more into one specific conspiracy tale that we're encountering. And yeah, that's 5G. And the first time that a lot of people in Germany realized that there were conspiracy myths around 5G and not just people being worried about a new technology was in the COVID pandemic. And we saw this in Germany, we saw this in many other countries too, that when there were protests around COVID, there was always some mention of 5G in the background in some kind of role. Often not quite clear what people really meant by 5G being connected to COVID. And that was actually fueled by some more prominent figures of the scene. One was, for example, Robert Kennedy, and not necessarily a person far from power too. He's the nephew of the former president of the United States. And his story was that 5G actually, that COVID actually was a tale invented to suppress protests against 5G because so the 5G or the mobile phone industry could build up their networks and microwave the nation. And another person who spread a lot of that was Thomas Cohen, who, especially with this one video, had an enormous reach in the scene, where he claimed that 5G was actually causing COVID. And Thomas Cohen, by the way, was the former vice president of the American Physicians Association for Anthroposophic Medicine. So he's kind of a central figure of the pseudo-medicine scene too. And that did have an impact, of course, on real life. It had an impact on people working for telecom companies getting threats, actually people working for telecom companies being physically attacked, and there were a number of arson attacks on mobile phone base stations. The number changed from publication to publication because the more respectable media usually reported about this once, saying now there have been 20, and then they didn't report about it again when the number went higher and higher. And there were about 100 all over Europe, the vast majority in the UK. So what most people didn't see was that this was not something that came out of nowhere, but this was the result of a campaign that had been built up against 5G before the pandemic. And this was from the spring of 2019. If you entered just in German 5G Strahlung, 5G radiation into YouTube, those were the videos that you got, and these are all out of the top 20 that YouTube would show you. Assault on the pineal gland with fluoride and 5G, a radiant future with 5G, media scientists, why 5G is extremely dangerous, urgent wake-up call, 5G is a danger to life and limb, 5G, a tsunami is closing in, destruction of humans, animals, and nature by 5G radiation. 5G, the global microwave oven with no escape, a transmitter every 200 meters. 5G apocalypse, the extinction event. You see it's growing, it's getting worse and worse. 5G declaration of war on mankind. And if I say this is an orchestrated campaign, and a lot of these videos had this KLA.TV in the corner. Now that's not the Kosovo Liberation Army. That is Klagemauer TV. That is a video channel operated by an authoritarian pseudo-Christian cult from Switzerland that uses this channel to spread anti-Semitic and anti-democratic propaganda. So there is really a system behind that. And, but the phenomenon itself, it wasn't limited to German-speaking countries. This is a page from the Czech Republic claiming that 5G was indeed a radiation weapon, a targeted energy weapon, and they compared this to this American active denial system, which is an experimental crowd control measure where you get people to go away by just making them feel hot. But that is, indeed, it is experimental. It works at a different frequency to 5G. It works at very, very different energies to 5G, and because you need so much energy for that, this has to be mounted on like a big truck to just control a few people. So it's really not a very efficient thing, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with 5G. But the problem is not so much the conspiracy media, the alternative media. The problem is that this actually appeared in mainstream media too. And this is all, I mean, these are two major German newspapers, national newspapers, and a public German radio channel. And all three of these articles claim that there were groups of scientists calling for stopping 5G. And these are actually three different appeals by scientists saying we should stop 5G in these three articles. Of course, when you look at these lists of scientists signing these appeals, you find the same names over and over. And just to give you an impression of the kind of people that we have there, I've looked at one in a little more detail, who actually wrote an article, or an opinion piece, truly in Die Welt, which is another major German newspaper, Professor Werner Tiede. And he wrote something like that internet and mobile communications are enemies of climate, which is something you can argue if you look at the power consumption of computing centers that you need to run the internet. However, what he's saying is that mobile networks heat up the Earth because of all the energy emitted by the base stations. That's what heats up the Earth. And besides, he says that there is no proof that it is safe, and it is a new type of radiation, and therefore we should stop that. And so now, who is this Professor Werner Tiede? What is his qualification that makes him an expert on radiation safety? Now, I have to tell you, I'm not particularly sure what systematic theology does, but I don't think it makes you an expert on radiation safety, seriously. If we look at some other countries, Austria was a bit lucky in that respect. If you look at the Austrian press, the reporting there was a lot more in the direction of the return of radiation angst, and 5G has begun, and so has panic mongering. And you can say, okay, now this is their standard. This is like in Austria. That's solid journalism, as solid as it gets in journalism. However, if you look at some less solid media in Austria, they wrote basically along the same line. So Austria was lucky in that respect. Where Austria was less lucky is in the medical field. And actually, I mean, we're in a building owned by a very respected medical society. Another very respected medical society in Austria is the Austrian Chamber of Physicians. And the president of the Austrian Chamber of Physicians was one of the key figures spreading false news about 5G in Austria. And actually, these are quotes from a German page that is spreading conspiracy myths about 5G. And they keep quoting the Austrian Chamber of Physicians, and they keep quoting the Medical University of Vienna. And this is from the president of the Austrian Chamber of Physicians. Leading scientists came to the conclusion that high-frequency electromagnetic radiation must be considered a proven carcinogen. And seriously, I have no idea what leading scientists he's talking about. But what I do know is that the Medical University of Vienna actually has a history of scientific misconduct when it comes to discrediting mobile networks. So yeah, there is a serious problem there in the medical field, not so much in the media when we look into Austria. But let's take a more sober scientific look at 5G. So what does 5G really mean? 5G is the fifth generation of mobile networks. So if you start with 1G, those were the old analog networks that were basically around since the 1950s. You could only talk on the phone. With 2G, those were the first digital networks, and that was the first big wave of popularization of mobile networks since the late 90s, where you had SMS and things like that. 3G first allowed something like mobile internet, seriously. 4G, the advent of live video streaming over the network. And then with 5G, of course, I mean, there is really not much that you can do on your personal phone that would require more bandwidth than live video streaming. So the use case for a new generation of mobile networks after that is something different. It's called typically the Internet of Things, and I'll look into that in a second. So the main technical changes are in transmission protocols, in emitter and receiver technologies, in the way frequencies are used in antenna development, but the basic technology is basically unchanged since 2G. There's not that much that has changed. So the Internet of Things, when people talking about the Internet of Things, they usually mean like objects being connected to the Internet that normally wouldn't be, like refrigerators, cars, farming machines, travel bags, parcels. So the parcel that sends messages of where it is currently, or the very famous example of the refrigerator that monitors how much milk you have left and orders new milk when it runs empty, or new beer if you want that, if that's important. So. And if you look at this, you see that for most of these applications, high data transfer rates are not really all that important. What's much more important is to be able to connect many devices at the same time, and to disconnect them and reconnect them, and doing all of this very fast. So it's much more the flexibility of the network than the pure bandwidth power that's important there, which leads to some changes in the basic network structure. So if you look at the very traditional mobile network, now this is idealized. Of course, the cells are not all the same size, so the ranges of the different antennas, but they're somewhat similar. Whereas in 5G, you're going to have this basic network that's covering the large areas, and then in the city centers, like around Stephansdom in Wien or so, you're going to have very small cells that allow you to hook up to a very local cell. So it's kind of the boundaries between mobile networks and Wi-Fi are kind of washed away. So that's one of the basic principles of 5G. And if we're looking at what is that radiation, what are the numbers we're talking about? Electromagnetic waves are basically just an electric field that changes its direction. And this changing of direction of the electric field is something that propagates through space. So this whole thing moves with the speed of light, and we have basic properties that we have is the wavelength, that's just the distance from one peak to the next, or the frequency, if you're standing at one point, how many peaks move past you in 1 second. And since the speed of light is constant, the wavelength and the frequency are connected there by a constant factor, and that's the speed of light. So what do these waves do? Low frequency fields means the electric field changes its direction relatively slowly, which means you're going to have electric currents in the body. Electric charges will move in one direction, then they'll move in the other direction. That's, for example, what you have when you get close to a high voltage power line. And when it rains, the air is wet, you feel this tingling in your hair, and that's the electric currents running through your body because of the proximity to the power line. And if you would get too close to the power line, climb up the mast, you will feel pain, you will feel your muscles twitch, and in the extreme case, of course, if your heart muscles cramp, that's not good for your health. So if we're going up in the frequency spectrum or to shorter wavelengths, these electric currents, the field reverses its direction much faster. So the currents cannot move through your body by a very large distance. So what really happens is that electric charges in your body, and these are typically in dipole molecules, will start oscillating, they'll start vibrating, and this vibration of molecules is nothing but heat. So what microwaves do is they heat you up. And that's what a microwave oven does, and at a much lower energy, that's what all microwaves do. And and a microwave does it a little bit, it penetrates into the tissue and causes the warming a little bit farther inside the body. If you're going to even shorter wavelengths, to infrared, that happens to, more on the surface. That's why an infrared grill grills the surface of the meat, and the microwave oven warms it up from inside. So, that's the exact same effect that you get from other types of microwaves, just as a much lower intensity. So it just warms you up a bit. That's basically the health effect. And only when you go to very high frequencies, you get this effect that these electromagnetic waves can transfer so much energy to a single charge, to a single electron in the body, that they can rip it out of a molecule. And that's ionizing a molecule, and that can break up chemical bindings. And if that happens in your DNA, that can cause either the cell function to fail or the cell to multiply in an uncontrolled manner, and that means you get a tumor. So everything that's above the visible light, so in frequencies above the visible light to the left of the rainbow there, that's the stuff that can give you cancer. And now let's look at what kind of frequencies do we have in mobile communications. Now, again, we have the cramps on the one side as the effects, we have the tumors on the other side, and we have the heating basically as the only effect that we see in the middle. Now, if we're looking at technology that we've been using so far and that we're used to and that we can be pretty sure, I think, that doesn't kill us, 2G to 4G mobile phones, DCT phones, Wi-Fi, they're all in this area of the lower microwave spectrum. And if we're looking at 5G, the way it's been implemented now, we see that it's in exactly the same frequency range. And even 5G, as it is planned to be introduced in like 2025 and later, it uses these small cells. They will be at a higher frequency, but still in the microwave range. So there's really no scientific reason to worry about anything there. So what's changing actually between the generations? Now, what's changing is the use of frequencies and the distribution to devices. So in 2G, you actually had the base station communicating with several mobile phones at once on one frequency. In 3G, you had the base station communicating with each mobile phone on 4 frequencies at the same time. In 4G LTE, that was 16 frequencies at the same time with one device usually. And in 5G, you can do this massive allocation of frequencies to one device, but you can also just allocate one frequency to a device, which means the device is going to need much less power and it's going to save batteries. That's one of the advantages of 5G, that it only uses the bandwidth to one device that that device needs for the data it has to transfer. So it's much more flexible. The other thing that 5G in these small cells, 5G will be able to do, it's not on the frequencies that it has now, but in the small cells it will be able to a certain extent direct the radiation it emits in the direction of the device that it's communicating with, which actually means that it can talk on the same frequency with a mobile phone on the one side and with a computer on the other, and with an automobile in the third direction, and the tree down there will get no radiation whatsoever. Which is, I mean, in principle, that's an advantage for people to be exposed to less radiation. But the fact that this works will causes people to say that this is a directed energy weapon. Yeah. But aren't there scientific publications saying that mobile phone radiation causes cancer? There are publications that sound scientific that try to explain how this could happen. And I said the only thing that, from a physics point of view, the only thing that makes sense is that mobile phone radiation will warm you up. But there are people who claim that the waves will make your DNA oscillate in waves, and that at some point your DNA tears apart. Now, DNA is a molecule that is doesn't have a lot of electric charge, especially compared to water, which you have all over your body. And on the other hand, it's one of the most stable molecules that you have in your body. That's why it's used to store your genetic information. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that DNA could, by electromagnetic waves, could be made to resonate and to oscillate so fast that the molecule actually rips apart. It's pretty bizarre. Then there is the story that ion channels in the cell membranes might open up in the wrong direction because of electric fields. And actually that's possible, that ion channels and membranes open up because you have an electric field, if that electric field is about 10,000 times as strong as the electric field connected to mobile phones. And it's used in labs with really high power electric fields. It's called electroporation. But again, it has nothing whatsoever to do with mobile phones because they just don't emit that much energy. Then there is the story that waves turn the electron spins and break up chemical bonds, and that's again, to do that, to actually break up chemical bonds, you would need ionizing radiation again, which has a lot more energy. So no, it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever from a physics perspective. But you find this, and this is a brochure by anti-mobile phone campaigners in Germany, and they quote an expert there who actually promotes this third mechanism that the waves turn the electron spins. Ulrich Warnke, who's a biologist, who's actually, he has a few scientific publications from way back in the 1980s, not about this, but he writes that that's possible. And the thing is, who is Ulrich Warnke? What else does he write? He writes, for example, or if you look into what he writes, I mean, it's a mix of cherry-picked facts mixed with pure nonsense and all written in a jargon that makes it sound scientific. What he writes otherwise are books like this one, The Opening of the Third Eye, Quantum Philosophy of the Beyond Module with a download to activate your pineal gland. So that's the kind of people that we're dealing with there. The next thing that's happily quoted is a study by, for example, Dr. Gerd Oberfeld, that's something from Austria again. Oberfeld published a study on a cluster of cancer cases in a town called Hausmannstetten around a mobile phone base station. And after this was published, it turned out that by the time that these cancer cases appeared there, the mobile phone base station wasn't even there yet. So that was set up after the. So unless you want to imply some kind of time reversal or so, that is not very plausible. And what's often quoted is the IARC, the International Agency on Cancer Research, which is part of the World Health Organization, classifying mobile phone radiation as possibly carcinogenic. Now, if we're looking at these classifications, we have to see that the IARC factors has classifications on 1,079 influence factors now, and they typically, what they do is they hire authors to make these reviews, and these authors are often not uncontroversial in the first place. And if we look at the results, out of the 1,079 substances and professional influences that they have classified, they have exactly 0 that are classified as probably not carcinogenic. Radio waves, which I mean, they only classify radio waves in total, are classified in 2B as possibly carcinogenic. That's actually the lowest classification of the ones that they deem classifiable, together with the Asian pickled vegetables. So plutonium, tobacco, alcoholic beverage, and sausage are in definitely carcinogenic. But what are these reviews for the IARC based on? They're based on studies, typically toxicology studies with rats like these two. These are the two latest ones, and I'll look into one of those, and that's the study by the National Toxicology Program. Now the problem if you're studying if something causes cancer is, first of all, the tumor will not tell you what caused it. The second is that so you're measuring a signal that is caught up in all kinds of other tumors. So to find out if there is a signal, you want to maximize the effect of the factor and you want to minimize the noise, as any engineer will be able to tell you. The problem is that the influence factor must, of course, be realistic, and the problem, so that you cannot maximize the influence factor beyond any limit. And the other is that to minimize the effect, you would, I mean, there are just other tumors, and especially most lab animals have a tendency to get tumors relatively often. There is a human bias in it, so that you should do blinding, of course. And so this whole thing can only be done by statistics. So the key question is a question of statistical significance, and statistically significant means that if there is no difference between one group and the other, if you get a result that in that case would appear only with a probability of 5% or less, then you're talking of something that is statistically significant. And I'll get back to that, the implications of that in a second. But what it basically means is you have to have one question that you want to investigate and one method, and you have to set all of this before you start, so, because that's what the standard significance test is meant for. Now, what are they doing? Of course, they want to maximize the effect of the factor. So they expose rats to radiation intensities of 0 for comparison, 1.5, 3, and 6 watts per kilogram for 9 hours a day, basically through all their life. And now 6 watts per kilogram, I weigh 70 kilograms, that would be 420 watts. I would have to stick like 400 of these on my body and have them emitting at maximum power for 9 hours a day. Or otherwise, to get a warming effect of 400 watts, I would have to wrap myself into 4 electric heating blankets all day. So that's the amount of heat from radiation that they expose these rats to. The problem, I mean, the Sprague Dolly rats that they used as lab animals do get tumors even more than other rodents do. The human bias, they did no blinding really, with one side investigation that they did, with the exception of that. They comparing the groups, they looked at 100 different tumor subtypes, and they split their rats into male and female and irradiated with 2G and 3G. So in fact, they had 400 different tests and looked which one was significant. So that's pretty much the same method that Seralini used to prove that glyphosate causes cancer, or that Daryl Bem used, the psychologist Daryl Bem used, to prove that you would do better in a test by learning for the test, studying for the test after you have taken the test. And the method is called fishing for significance. So, and the effect, the results were, I mean, if there was no effect, you would expect out of 400 samples, you would expect to have 20 positive samples, 20 samples where you had a significant effect. They found 9, actually even those 9, mostly by massaging their data a little bit. But if you look at the overall results, yes, there are some slight indications. For example, they find the same tumor type in male and female rats, or in the same tumor type in the 2G and 3G sample, and they have overall a little more tumors in the irradiated rats than in the non-irradiated rats. So you get this feeling, there might be something, there might be some very weak effect, especially when you only look at the abstract, but then there is this, and this shows you how long did the rats live, or how many rats were living after how many weeks in the study. So you have on the y-axis the rate of survival and the rate of the study, and you find that there is one group in the sample where the rats died significantly earlier. Now guess what? These are the rats that were not irradiated. They died significantly earlier than the ones that were irradiated. And the people who did this study actually speculate in the publication. They speculate that the radiation might have caused them to live longer, which I personally find not the most plausible explanation. And if you look into the study, you actually find they even write about the cause of death, and you find that these rats that died early were mostly euthanized because somebody deemed them too sick to live. And now if you know that the whole thing wasn't blinded, you find that this must have an influence on your results. So the whole thing, the question is, what does this mean? And I would say that means that you cannot draw any serious information from the results of this study, because there were so many, and this is kind of harsh, because I mean, I'm a physicist, I'm not a toxicologist, and I'm looking at a toxicology study. That's another field of science, and I'm saying that what they're doing is not good science. And I know that this is kind of iffy, and I don't really feel well doing that, but, and they say this is standard procedure in toxicology, we're following the standard. It's still No, it doesn't feel good to me, and I think I can justify why it doesn't feel good to me. So, and this is my last slide, Amadeo, don't worry. I know Amadeo is strict. Does this really help us that we know all this? Now, this is something that happened, a story that appeared in the fall of 2018, the dead birds in The Hague in the Netherlands. There was a case where, and this is the way it was reported, hundreds of dead birds. This is how dangerous 5G radiation is. At Heugenspark, Den Haag in the Netherlands, there were experiments with modern 5G technology. The result, hundreds of migratory birds fell from the trees dead, and the reason is the 5G microwave radiation. Now, there were, of course, there were these dead birds, and there was an investigation, and we know the results, and they were published in the research portal mimikama.at, which I can very much recommend. It's kind of Snopes in German. There were in total 338 dead starlings found in that park within 15 days. And it's not a huge park, so finding 338 dead starlings there within 15 days is not a totally negligible effect. There was something going on. The thing is that during that time, in all of The Hague, there was not a single operating 5G station. The nearest one was in Rotterdam, which is not terribly far away, but notably, you did not find any dead birds in Rotterdam. You only find them in The Hague and only in Heugenspark. So this sounds strange, doesn't really match the idea this is all caused by 5G. And so, unfortunately, I forgot to translate the last one. So there was a scientific investigation into the cause of death, and they found that they had poisoning from yew, from taxus, which is a poisonous tree, and which is strange because the birds normally eat the berries from this tree and it doesn't harm them. But apparently what had happened is that some gardener who didn't know that cut the trees with an electric saw, so there were splinters of wood sticking to the berries, and the wood is poisonous to the birds too. So, and when the birds eat the berries with splinters of wood on it, they die, and that's apparently what happened because they found the poison from that wood in these dead birds. And so there was a serious scientific investigation by the Veterinary Research Institute Wageningen. They found the reason, and in principle the story is dead. It was dead in the fall of 2018, but this didn't stop the people spreading that. So Extreme News, which is a German alternate media site, spread in May 2019 still the story about the dead birds of The Hague and this being caused by 5G. And now if we argue against that, we're in a very tough position because when they have truths that come from a psychic, what can we say against that? So thank you, and I think we can go into discussion now.
Thank you very much, Holm. I think there's going to be quite a bit of discussion on these items later on. So I'd like to now ask Jan Willem van Pruyen to come up for the next talk. He's an associate professor at the Free University of Amsterdam, and his research interests are conspiracy theories, populism, extremism, and unethical behavior. So please welcome Jan Willem.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to speak here. Like the first speaker, I always wanted to speak at a Skeptics Conference, so here we are. My title of my talk is Belief in Conspiracy Theories During a Pandemic, and let's see, there we are. We have all witnessed, I think, a lot of conspiracy theories during the pandemic. Early in the pandemic, there were theories that the virus was created in the lab by human beings. There were also theories that 5G radiation, well, that is of course directly relevant to the previous talk, was actually responsible for the pandemic. That was a theory promoted by the British conspiracy theorist David Icke, who said that 5G was first introduced in Wuhan, which was actually a bit misleading because it was first introduced in Wuhan plus a lot of other Chinese cities where it took much longer for the virus to arrive. And then, of course, poor Bill Gates, I think he really tries to do well with the world, but he's always a lead figure in many conspiracy theories. Also in this case, where he was accused of creating the virus to later on sell the cure. Conspiracy theories, when I started studying conspiracy theories in 2008, several of my colleagues asked me, what are you doing with this topic? Isn't this just a fringe phenomenon, just a few, strange people in society who believe that, and for the rest, no one? This is actually not entirely true. These are the figures of nationally representative samples drawn during the pandemic on the question whether or not COVID-19 was planned or purposefully created in the lab. You see pretty high ratings, 25% and 26% of United States and Canada finding these statements credible, and even 39% in Australia. There was also a sample in my country, there it was actually 15%, so when I was on a Dutch radio show, I was confronted with these numbers and asked the question, aren't you shocked that it is this high? And I could say, well, no, actually I'm pretty relieved that it is this low in my country. In the Netherlands, we have a term for people who believe in all these far-fetched conspiracy theories, and that's wappie. I honestly don't know how to translate it well. Probably loony would work, which brings about some sort of stereotypical image of a conspiracy theorist as this lonely individual without a job, being a keyboard warrior in their basement and spreading all sorts of conspiracy theories. But the truth is that conspiracy theories are everywhere in society. Some of them are really successful, really good at what they're doing. Take Eric Clapton. He's widely recognized as one of the best guitar players in the world. He's also totally against the COVID vaccines. He has called all the scientific research on COVID-19 propaganda, and he also wrote actually 2 songs about his opposition against the COVID-19 measures and the restrictive measures and so forth. Great music, of course, even though I didn't quite agree with the lyrics. Woody Harrelson, a well-known Hollywood actor, in March 2020 published on his Instagram site that he actually thought that 5G radiation was behind the pandemic. Roseanne Barr, also quite a well-known actress, is actually pretty well-known also for her many conspiracy theories in the context of COVID-19. She, in the beginning of the pandemic at least, she was spreading the theory that she thought that the United States government had created the pandemic as a tool to kill elderly people and steal their pensions. So, you don't need to be an unknown or failed person in life to believe conspiracy theories. They're everywhere in society, rich people, poor people, famous people, unfamous people. Also, a couple of Nobel Prize winners are known for their conspiracy theories. Now, this presentation, I would like to talk about conspiracy theories during the pandemic, and I would like to answer 2 questions. First of all, are they harmful or harmless? Should we be concerned? That's, I think, a very legitimate question to ask. And the second is more psychological or theoretical, and that's the question, why do conspiracy theories flourish during a pandemic? What is it about the pandemic that has provided such fertile soil for these types of beliefs to flourish? Now, first of all, are COVID-19 conspiracy theories harmful? Now, early in the pandemic in the Netherlands and also in the UK, and I think also a couple of other countries, there were activist groups putting these telecommunication masts on fire. And here to the on the right picture, you can also see 5G that was written there. And so there were activist groups, and the police has very explicitly indicated that these groups did this because of the belief that 5G radiation was behind the pandemic, and this was actually considered dangerous because putting these telecommunication masts are not just responsible for 5G but for all mobile communication, and so when it's not working you run the risk that people are no longer capable of calling the emergency number for a while, which during a pandemic when you might get really ill suddenly isn't exactly a good situation. Also, there have been many COVID-19 protests. A lot of these protests went along with conspiracy theories, some of them very general, like you saw these signs that, you know, they're lying to us in whatever way that might be. Others more specific, they were like targeted against the COVID-19 vaccines and based on beliefs that there were microchips in there or poison or other sorts of harmful stuff. Now, these are, of course, I'd say indications, but they're also what they are, anecdotes. And what we, of course, need is actual research and scientific evidence. Now, when the pandemic started, I gathered with a group of other researchers, and we pooled resources to do a large-scale three-wave study in the Netherlands with a research organization, Kieskompas. And what we did was, so that was a large three-wave panel study, and what we did was we first drew a first wave on a large sample of more than 9,000 participants. And then the second wave, we had almost 7,000 of them again replying to our questionnaire. And you know, in each wave, we had some questions in there that were the same and others that were a little different. So we used this to investigate many different research questions. And then the third wave was in December. And there were almost 5,000 that had responded to all three the waves. Also note the timing. So the first wave was during the first lockdown. The second wave was in June. That was in between lockdowns. So there were still some restrictions. Physical distancing was still mandatory, but you know, society was reasonably open. And then in December 2020, it was the second lockdown. It was lockdown again. Now, this was a first publication that came out of it. So for this one, we only used the first and the third wave. And a question was, so to what extent did conspiracy beliefs in April 2020 predict outcomes by December 2020, so 8 months later? Now, these outcomes were measured in a binary format. Did you do this in the past 8 months? Or did this happen to you in the past 8 months? Yes or no? Now, these were the results. So the dotted line means a null effect, and if the confidence interval is to the left of that, it means a lower likelihood of saying yes to it, and if it's to the right of that, a higher likelihood of saying yes to it. So April, conspiracy beliefs, 8 months later, did they get tested for corona? So the more people believe conspiracy theories in April, 8 months later, they were less likely to have gotten tested. We also asked if people got tested, was the test positive? Actually, the more people believe conspiracy theories in April, 8 months later, if they got tested, the test was more likely to actually be positive. Had they received a fine for violating the corona regulation? There you just see a huge confidence interval. That means because there weren't that many people who received a fine in there, so that doesn't actually mean much. Have you received too many visitors in your home than was allowed? Have you visited the party or bar where it was more crowded than allowed according to the regulations? Higher conspiracy theories predicted a higher likelihood of responding yes 8 months later. Have you lost your job, or did you suffer from reduced income? The same. There's actually multiple explanations for that. Of course, a very simple alternative explanation is that people in April who were insecure of their jobs might have been more likely to believe conspiracy theories to begin with. But there's also another possible explanation, and we get to that, and that is experience rejection and have you rejected others. So experience rejection means, did other people reject you in the past? So did you lose friends, social contacts in the past 8 months due to your opinion about corona? And have you rejected others, like friends or family members, due to their opinion on corona? And what you actually see is an asymmetry. The more people believe conspiracy theories, the more likely it is to have experienced rejection, and the less likely it was that they had rejected others. So in other words, what we actually see is that people who don't believe conspiracy theories are more likely to reject conspiracy theories than vice versa. Society is fed up with conspiracy theories. We don't want them, we reject them. So there are social consequences as well. Now, so this was a project that we thought was really interesting, and I think already to some extent answers this question, are they harmful or harmless? But they are also a bit descriptive. They don't really tell us much about the process. So And in this project we used all three waves to test two possible perspectives. And the first one is that conspiracy theories may be influential. So that's the idea if people believe conspiracy theories. They gradually take these health recommendations by experts less seriously, and they gradually start believing conspiracy theories more and more. But there's also an alternative idea, for instance, that was raised in the book by Hugo Mercier, and I've also written that possibility up myself recently, actually, is that it may also actually be reversed, that conspiracy theories be after the fact, that people use conspiracy theories to justify their beliefs and behaviors. So you really don't want to engage in physical distancing, for instance, but there's strong pressure on you to do so. And then you may, use conspiracy theories, cling to conspiracy theories to justify that. If the first theory is correct, you would predict that conspiracy theories predict a progressive decrease in, for instance, well, we now looked at physical distancing. We actually also looked at other variables, but I'm going to show you results for physical distancing over time. And if the second one is correct, you'd predict the reverse. So decreased physical distancing predicts increased conspiracy thinking over time. Well, these were the results, so that's that. Now, this is, of course, a little bit overwhelming, so allow me to walk you through it. Each arrow you see two numbers, two figures. The one on the left that's a cross-leg panel model, so these are regular standardized regression coefficients. And to the right, then in italics, that's the random intercepts cross-leg panel model. That means that's a bit more of a sophisticated statistical procedure where you partial out within subjects change. So that is the extent to which individual participants have changed over time. Okay? Now, like I said, I'm going to walk you through it. First of all, this was actually not expected, but I thought it was really interesting. Are conspiracy beliefs negative related, so more conspiracy theories predict they less physical distancing? The answer was yes, they do, but only during lockdowns. Okay, so in June there was still the rule that physical distancing was necessary, but society was open again, and we don't see that link anymore. So apparently, I suspect in that situation also people who don't believe conspiracy theories, not so much due to the opening of society, also didn't take that seriously anymore. But the link was there during lockdowns. Then we looked at these cross-legged effects over time. So do conspiracy beliefs predict decreased physical distancing, and does physical distancing predict decreased conspiracy beliefs? You see a grain of truth in both perspectives actually, but the paths going from conspiracy beliefs to physical distancing, so the idea that it's influential, are actually a lot stronger than vice versa. So there's actually some evidence for both perspectives, but it's stronger for the idea that conspiracy theories are influential. And then this is, like I said, within person change. We only found one effect, and that was from conspiracy beliefs to physical distancing. So in line with the idea that conspiracy theories are influential and decrease physical distancing over time, but only early in the pandemic, only in the first few months of the pandemic. And after that, apparently, it stabilized, or the physical distancing was changes in individuals were not predicted by conspiracy beliefs anymore. So to summarize these findings, so for physical distancing, there's actually more support for the notion that conspiracy theories are influential. The overall cross-legged effects point in both directions, but the effects of conspiracy beliefs predicting physical over time are actually much stronger, almost twice as strong, and more than twice as strong than vice versa. And in terms of within-person change, conspiracy beliefs predict a decrease in physical over time and not vice versa, but only early in the pandemic and not in a later phase of the pandemic. So these were the conclusions of this project. So, what does that mean? Should we get rid of the idea that conspiracy theories are merely a justification mechanism? Actually, not so fast. There is also one other thing about physical distancing. It's not scary, right? I mean, it can be annoying, but no one is afraid to keep to 1.5 or 2 meters distance with others. We also did a time-lagged study later on during the vaccination campaign. And vaccination is a little different. That's scary to many people, right? An unknown substance in your body, and some people are afraid of needles. And it's actually funny because for vaccination there's a lot of public attention to, the danger of conspiracy theories. If people believe conspiracy theories, they are unwilling to get themselves vaccinated. This was a two-wave study in March and May 2021 during the vaccination campaign. But we actually found that, the correlation was clearly there at both time points. But if you look at the effects over time, COVID conspiracy theories at time 1 did not predict a decrease in vaccination intentions at time 2, and reverse actually was true. So apparently, the order with vaccination intention is reversed than is commonly assumed. People are afraid of the vaccine for whatever reason, because they don't know the substance, they're afraid of needles, and that leads them to embrace conspiracy theories. We theorize to justify that sentiment. So in other words, are they influential or a justification mechanism? Actually, the conclusion appears to be there's a grain of truth in both perspectives, and it depends on the dependent variable, for instance. Now, are they harmful during a pandemic? So the answer to the first question. So, during the pandemic, conspiracy beliefs predict detrimental behavioral and life outcomes over time. So we have examined testing and also testing positively. Rule violation, economic outcomes such as whether or not people still had a job 8 months later, and also a social rejection experience. So I'd say, yes, conspiracy theories are harmful over time. And here we have actually only looked at the effects on people themselves, not necessarily for society, such as protest and polarization and so forth. And temporal order and psychological mechanisms appears to vary per dependent measure. So conspiracy beliefs particularly predict physical distancing over time. Weak evidence at best for the opposite temporal order. So this points at the possible consequences of conspiracy thinking. But vaccine hesitancy predicts increased conspiracy belief over time and not vice versa. So that's actually more consistent with that other theoretical idea that conspiracy theories help to justify and rationalize one's anti-vaccination sentiments. Now, that brings me to my second question. So, as said, we've seen a lot of conspiracy theories during the pandemic. And what is it about conspiracy theories that have made them so popular? What made these conspiracy theories flourish? Now, actually, I don't really think it's necessarily a pandemic specifically that is required. I think what is required is social crisis situations more generally. So situations that make people feel anxious, that make people feel out of control, and that make people feel uncertain about the future. So distress is actually a common cause of conspiracy belief, and that may be caused by a pandemic, but also by an economic crisis. When people, are afraid of losing their jobs, then conspiracy theories tend to go up. When there's a terrorist strike, think of 9/11, that also yielded a lot of conspiracy theories at the time. Think of the Notre Dame fire, that also spurred tons of conspiracy theories on social media, particularly in France at the time. So the moment people get distressed, then conspiracy beliefs go up. Now, that's actually a pretty well-known insight, so I am actually more interested in the question why that is the case. What is it about distress that increases conspiracy beliefs? Now, in the remainder of my talk, I will argue that distress and conspiracy beliefs are related due to their shared link at 3 levels of analysis. First, distress has a link with how the mind works, how the mind processes information in a way that it facilitates conspiracy theories. When people feel distressed, they start thinking more in terms of us versus them. They start stereotyping more, they see more conflict in society, and that I will show that it also predicts conspiracy beliefs. And the third one, when people feel distressed and anxious, their opinions polarize. They get more, that's a paradox. When people feel uncertain, they start compensating for that by becoming more certain about their opinions, about their political opinions. So they polarize and radicalize. And that also, I will show that also predicts conspiracy theories. Now, one mental process that is very important to understand conspiracy beliefs is pattern perception. That's a property of the brain that we all have. That's our capacity to detect cause and effect. And that's a good thing, because there actually is a lot of cause and effect in the world. We wouldn't survive traffic if we wouldn't be able to detect cause and effect. But sometimes people also connect dots that are illusory. And you see that clearly in the QAnon movement, who see these breadcrumbs and the chaos of the White House, Donald Trump. They see all sorts of deeper meaning in that. I was also triggered by by the sparrows. So there are sparrows in The Hague, and that must be due to 5G towers. Never mind that the nearest 5G tower is in Rotterdam. But that's examples of when people exaggerate pattern perception, when people start perceiving patterns that are not necessarily there. Now, this is a study that we did on illusory pattern perception. In one of them, we had a random algorithm online throw a virtual coin 100 times, and these we divided them in chunks of 10 and showed them to participants and asked them, so what do you see here? This is a coin being thrown. Is this? Do you believe this is fully random, or do you see some sort of pattern, as if there's something with the coin that makes it non-random? And they scored whether or not they thought it was random or whether or not they saw a pattern. And after that, participants rated a lot of well-known conspiracy theories. This was before the pandemic, actually, so this was mostly 9/11 and the moon landings. And we actually, found that it was a pretty decent correlation. So the more people saw patterns in actual randomness, the more likely they were also to believe conspiracy theories. In another study, we asked them to, these are paintings of Jackson Pollock. Some people see all sorts of nice geometric figures in there. Other people just see paint splashed on canvas. I have to confess to belong to the latter category. But we asked them, so what do you see here? Do you see patterns or not so much? And the more people saw patterns in that, the more likely they were also to believe conspiracy theories. And there's also other research in line with it. So this was a study by a different research groups, and they showed that stronger beliefs that spurious relations represent a true causal relation also predict increased conspiracy beliefs. An example is, for instance, there's a strong correlation between the amount of chocolate consumption in a country and the number of Nobel Prize winners of a country. Is there? I also like chocolate, by the way, but I'll never win a Nobel Prize, by the way. But anyway. So the more people thought that was actually a real relationship, the more likely they were to believe conspiracy theories. Now, also intergroup conflict. So intergroup conflict is also associated with conspiracy theories. Democrats have conspiracy beliefs about Republicans. We saw that after the 2016 election. Republicans have conspiracy beliefs about Democrats. They thought the elections were rigged after 2020. So, intergroup and conspiracies are actually, a conspiracy is a group. It is a group of outsiders. Conspiracy thinking is often us versus them thinking. Us, the people, and them, the hostile conspiracy. And we also saw that during the pandemic, when Donald Trump raised the issue, this was a Chinese virus and blamed China on the pandemic. And this was actually mutual. This was a high-ranked Chinese diplomat who stated it might be the US military that brought the coronavirus to Wuhan. And indeed, the conspiracy theory that the United States created the coronavirus is actually very popular in China. This was a study that we did before the pandemic, but it was in the context of the trade war. So these were United States and Chinese participants. And among the United States, we asked questions such as the secret agency of China has been trying to influence political decision-making in America. And in China, we asked that question. I'm not sure how your Mandarin is doing, but it means the secret agency of America has been trying to influence political decision-making in China. Now, when I started this, I, of course, like most people, thought this would be way higher in the United States, but my Chinese colleague instantly told me, forget it, this is going to be way higher in China, and she was right. It was actually much higher in China, but more interesting was why that was the case. It was because of cultural differences in power distance values and vertical collectivism. These are values that make people more focused on the group, that make groups more important to you and to who you are. And therefore, in this conflict situation, they also simply perceived more conflict with the United States than vice versa, and that drove their conspiracy beliefs. This was a study in which we showed participants a scenario, and it was during the pandemic, and and we told them, imagine there's a vaccine that's very effective and it's completely safe and it has been approved, and you could take it tomorrow. Would you take it? And these were United States participants, and we told them it was created by United States scientists or by Chinese scientists. And then we saw that these United States participants were far more likely to take the United States vaccine, and also believed more conspiracy theories, such as that the vaccine had been tampered with when it was created by Chinese. Then one of my Chinese PhD students was so kind to translate the materials in China, the same materials, and run that same study in China, and then we saw this. So the Chinese were actually far more willing to take the Chinese vaccine and believed far more conspiracy theories about the United States vaccine. Does this actually have any real-life implications? Actually, in 2021, if you wanted to travel to China, being vaccinated wasn't good enough. You had to be vaccinated specifically with the Chinese vaccine, and one of my Chinese PhD students knows, because he had taken 2 shots of Pfizer and then went to his family in China and had to take 2 more of the Chinese vaccines. Vaccination is good, but this was maybe a little bit over the top. Then the third thing that is important, so polarized opinions. When people feel, like I said, when people feel anxious, then their opinions polarize, they become more self-confident, self-assured of their opinions about political matters. And we also know that that's really clearly associated with conspiracy theories. When the Brexit referendum took place, a very big predictor of a leave vote was the belief that the referendum would be rigged. It was also the belief that there's a Muslim conspiracy in Europe. Well, Trump, well, of course, his whole campaign was, of course, full of conspiracy theories. This is a study that we did in the Netherlands. We saw that conspiracy beliefs were actually stronger at both the left and the right extremes. So this is support for that idea that more relatively extreme ideological beliefs are associated with increased conspiracy thinking. The second speaker also had briefly referred to this study. This was a huge project by many authors, which we tested this quadratic term in 26 nations and more than 100,000 participants. And you saw also clear evidence that by and large, with some exceptions, it tended towards this quadratic term. This study actually also was designed to test an alternative idea. There's also a lot of people saying it's stronger at the right, the political right. And we actually also found some support for that. So it's not a symmetric U-curve on average. It's stronger at the extreme right than at the extreme left. Also, not all forms of being right-wing mattered as much. So being economically right-wing, so like, free market and so forth, that was nothing. There was a null effect. But if you were socially, culturally right-wing, such as anti-immigration opinions, that actually was pretty strongly related, that pretty strongly predicted conspiracy beliefs. So, this brings me at the end of my second question. Why do conspiracy beliefs flourish during a pandemic? When people feel anxious, then it triggers basic mental operations, so our tendency towards pattern perception increases. We start seeing more illusory patterns, and these illusory patterns are associated with conspiracy thinking. When people feel anxious, then also we know from previous research that then the tendency to see the world in us versus them increases. And as I've hoped to have persuaded you with, this intergroup conflict also is associated with increased conspiracy belief. And the third one, when people feel anxious, their opinions polarize. That's also a well-known finding in psychology. And when people's opinions polarize, so their beliefs become more radical, that's actually heavily intertwined with conspiracy beliefs, even though it's a bit stronger at the right extreme than at the left extreme. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And,
Thank you very much, Jan Willem. Now, before we come to the panel and the discussion, there was a suggestion which I've just taken up that we have a short break, and I would say we come back at 12. But before you go, we also want to have, I understand, a group photo, right? So anyone who is willing to be part of a group photo, please come up front now.